It's time for the Skyhawks Coaches Corner, recorded live at the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Skyhawks Coaches Corner, brought to you by Centura Health and Mercy Regional Medical Center. We're filming this week, as usual, in the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum. And we're joined this week by head football coach Darrius G. Smith. Coach, by the time this airs, we'll be about a week behind what's one of the big red letter days on any college football coach's calendar, National Signing Day.
Signing day, always a great day.
I asked you when you showed up, are you exhausted or euphoric, and your answer was?
A little bit of both. I mean, it's never ending. You got to remember, signing day is really the first day of a long period. So you're trying to get as many young men to sign those documents, get them sent back to you as soon as possible. We're still in some battles with some young men, so it's never ending. And what you want to try to do as a coach, get it to end so that you can really start focusing on the team that you already have in place, so that you can start preparing for the spring.
Okay. Well, and Coach, we want to talk about those players that are heading to Fort Lewis to play for the Skyhawks next year. Real quick, a little bit. People are maybe unaware this was, obviously COVID's made everything a little unusual, but because of the eligibility waivers for some of the kids you've already got across the country, that really did change recruiting this year. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
It changed recruiting across the country tremendously. Where we are as a status in our program, it did not affect us as much as people thought, but it is one of those situations where the NCAA grant knows all the players in existence right now a free year of eligibility. So where are you going to target your recruiting? What players are you going to actually need? Who are you going to bring? Who are you going to be bringing back? What positions would you increase depth? What positions are going to be diminished from depth? So it was a task of making sure you did a real good job of a balancing act. I always say FCS and Division II football, because we don't have the full 85 scholarships like the big boys. Right. We're more like the NFL. We have to go cap management. We have to make sure that the dollars are going where they need to go at the right amounts, and hopefully get the production of that value of the dollars coming back.
Okay. Well, let's jump into it.
All right.
I know I'm excited to hear who's coming into the nest.
Oh man, we got some great young men coming to the nest. Who do you want to talk about first?
I got a couple of kids going to come in and compete to see who gets to throw the ball around somewhere down the road for us. You want to start with the quarterbacks?
Let's start at the quarterbacks. It's always a good spot to start at.
You bet.
Right now, the two young men that signed with us were Nolan Bynum from Delta, Colorado, and Nolan was the first NLI to come through the system.
Okay.
He is a 6'1" quarterback, very strong arm, works well in the pocket, can escape the pocket and extend some plays, has the athleticism to runs a similar offense to what we did at high school.
Okay.
And one of the big things about trying to bring all the young men into the program, we wanted to make sure they were guys that wanted to be here.
Sure.
And recruiting is strange. Some guys had a lot of offers, some guys have less offers. Nolan was a young man that we were interested in all the way going back into the early part of fall when we were doing our recruiting, and we wanted to make sure that he was a guy that wanted to be here, would fit the system. He came up on a visit when we were finally able to get some young men on campus through the COVID stuff. His family loved it, and it was a great joy to hear his verbal commitment, and then to see his paperwork come through, being the first guy to come through. Can't get any better. When the quarterback guy, a leader, gets his paperwork in for us, it lets you know a little something right there.
That sort of guy who can take command of a huddle.
Exactly.
Now, what kind of quarterback is he? Is he going to be a double threat kid? You throw it around. What kind of numbers he put up in high school? Give us a little bit about the kind of player he is right now.
Well, right now he's the kind of player he can do both.
Okay.
I try not to 100% label young men as dual threat or pocket pass thing like what and people have made the term game manager almost a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's not. He's more of a drop back passer than he is a versatile guy, but he's the type of guy that, again, he has the ability to extend the plays with his legs.
Okay.
He can make throws. What I liked about when I watched his film was his accuracy.
Okay.
I mean, he was very, very accurate when he threw the football.
Okay. Well, yeah, and receivers appreciate that
Oh
too.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Tell us about your other quarterback recruit.
Well, Jack Hannenberg, coming from Ponderosa High School, left-hander. Okay. If I had to say who was a little bit more mobile, he's probably a tad bit more mobile than Nolan. But again, can run the offense. He is a leader. Both of those guys were first team all state in their regions. But Jack is, again, same type of qualities. Good leadership on the field. Can command the pocket. Can make some versatile moves with the ball. Accurate thrower. He can extend plays also. Like I said, if I had to label one of more of a dual threat thrower, it would probably be him. But at the same point in time, we're going to take advantage of the assets that our quarterbacks give us to make the offense run. So I'm never going to force a quarterback to do something that he's not capable of doing, because that's just not good football coaching.
Sure. Yeah, you adjust to the players you've got instead of make them adjust to you.
Exactly. And the best part about it, with both of those young men, they're coming from similar systems. Everything is, I'm sure it's not going to be called the same,
right.
But the dynamics of what you're seeing them do on film compared to what we're going to try to produce on the field in my offense, it's very similar. So you're hoping it is an easy transition. The quarterback spot is the hardest spot to really take over when you are young. So you're looking for a guy who can have some leadership ability, have to be able to and want to compete, and that's with all the positions on my squad. So the fact that both those young men in the recruiting process understood that two of them were coming in, they were going to be in the same class, similar accolades, but both of them wanted the challenge, and that's what I want. I want guys who want to compete and to challenge each other.
Well, and we've seen in years past, football teams, I don't care what level you're at, you're not getting through many seasons with one quarterback anymore.
You never have enough arms. It's just like pitching in baseball. You can never have enough arms.
It's the rise of the Joe Burrows and some of those guys who have to wait till that senior year to get the chance, and then they're able to really showcase themselves and jump. Has that made it a little easier for some of these high school, these really talented quarterbacks to accept that there's still a process coming into college, that they're going to have to compete for the spot? Are they a little more accepting of that?
Oh, yeah. Well, and they are, and especially at that position. And when you see the successes of the Joe Burrows and the Mac Jones and things especially on that biggest stage, it helps them understand that there's going to be a process. There's going to be something that you have to go through. Most young student athletes aren't mentally and physically ready just to step out on that field against a 22, 21-year-old man that's been playing college football for 2.5, maybe 3 years. So the ones that can do it at that quarterback position are very special individuals, and you can never take that away from them.
Sure.
But what I've seen, and then when you study the Joe Burrows and you study the Mac Jones and some of the other guys that come to you, if they're able to stay within the same system and watch the maturation process, then they're able to take the good and bad of all of their predecessors, and now when it's their time, they're very good at not making the mistakes. They minimize the bad things that could happen with the football. And that's what you saw with Burrows. That's what you saw with Mac Jones and several other guys that we saw across the country that were able to play this year. There were fourth-year starting quarterbacks.
Patience has definitely showed up as a virtue for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Another one that you talked about, leadership. You mentioned that with both of these kids, and I think it probably speaks well that, and I think in both cases, they're not going to be the only ones coming to Fort Lewis from their football teams next year. Others are following them. I want to talk about that when we come back after this break, and then the rest of this year's recruiting class.
Sounds good.
With Coach Darrius G. Smith right after these.
We know that there are certain sports that are more at risk to have ankle injuries. And so for my athletes in those types of sports, I'm often recommending not only preventative fitness activities, but also stretching and maintenance exercises for proprioception, and even so far in some situations, preventative bracing or taping. And you're struggling with either a current injury or an injury from the past that's causing you to have pain and dysfunction, I highly encourage you to get over with Mercy Sports Medicine. The athletic trainers there are a great first line of contact for ankle injuries in general. And then also if you need a consultation here at Mercy Orthopedics with me, they can help that happen seamlessly.
Welcome back to the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum and this week's Skyhawks Coaches Corner, brought to you by Centura Health and Mercy Regional Medical Center. I'm your host, Bob Bonner, alongside head football coach Darrius G. Smith. Big week this week with National Signing Day, and which is, as you explained, just sort of the beginning of a national signing process. But
Exactly.
But it started off well for you. We've talked about two quarterbacks are going to come in and compete with each other as freshmen, become a part of the program. We spoke to the leadership abilities of both of them, and I think one of the indicators of that is that they've each got a teammate coming. One of them a wide receiver.
One of them was a wide receiver.
And one of them a beast offensive lineman. Tell me about these kids.
Well, also coming from Delta will be Corey Braslin, and he was Nolan Bonham's wide receiver. And you know, we kind of do this when we do our junior college recruiting, finding teammates. But when you talk to in the high school aspect, again, with so much limited access and resources, and trying to get a good evaluation of young men in the process, it was one of those deals where both, when Braslin got on our wire, it was one of the deals like we're watching Nolan's film, like, well, who's he throwing to? I mean, this guy's making all these catches, and
right.
What's happening in his recruiting process. And we were fortunate enough to, unfortunately, with a lot of young men right now, they don't really know what's happening because a lot of us at universities don't know what's happening with the recruiting process. So we were able to get into him. Literally, we had been recruiting Nolan for a while. Colby's process had just started to spike up. So when we got into the mix, and it's a good thing when you can have a teammate, have enough athletic ability to have the chance to go to on the next level and play with you. And I think he's going to be one that is really going to add to our program, obviously give us some depth. And he really doesn't know, he's a multi-sport player, but he has a frame that, he walked into the door. And when I finally got to see him in person, I was like, ooh, okay, this wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting something, but I'm like, wait a minute.
He looks like a quarterback's best friend.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. This makes this decision even easier. Hey, we got some scholarship dollars available. Would you like it? And I think having the ability to come play with a teammate makes it so much better. So much better.
And a multi-sport athlete, so the athleticism to go with the build, obviously.
If I can, more and more, I wish young men would stop being specialized. Playing multiple sports, being active, there's just so much more to gain in the physical development when you play multiple sports. There's transition of body movements, understanding of leverage, and there's nothing wrong per se to specializing, but if you're just doing that one sport, you just limit yourself so much, I think.
Sure.
So I try to find young men that, that normally you get that football, basketball combination. If you're looking for speed, the football track combination. One of the ones that's I try to get that matchup is either go football, baseball, because of hand-eye coordination. So that's whether it be playing out in the outfield, putting ground balls, or just you're successful in baseball if you can hit a ball 1 out of 3 times.
Right.
1 out of so 300 is great.
Sure.
So that's what you're looking for there. Anytime you can capitalize on somebody who plays multiple sports, advantage.
Okay.
Advantage.
You've got a big offensive lineman coming in with your other quarterback. Tell us about him.
Parker Webb is same thing. You go through the recruiting process. See, not with COVID and the restrictions between states and counties, and not necessarily want to put my coaches in danger or putting them in a situation where they put student athletes or families in danger. We could tell on film he was a big kid. We didn't know how big. You could tell he had decent arm length because you're always looking for that arm length in offensive line, but you couldn't really tell. So when we were able, we liked him on film. I gotta be honest, we liked him on film, but we wasn't quite sure. So the ability to have him come on campus when he came up on a visit, it was literally just like the receiver. When he walked through the door, you went, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing in person now.
Sure.
This is great. Let me go back and study this film a little bit more. The one thing you can't coach speed, you can't coach height, especially vertical height. I said height, size.
Vertical size, you bet. So when he walked through the door, it was every bit of 6'7", 6'8", and I'm just going, ooh. He has the long arms. Offensive line is probably the second hardest position to make an adjustment from level to level. So to get him young and to be able to groom him in our system, that's going to be huge. An advantage to us increasing our size and our length on our offensive line. And I say that's usually the hardest to make that adjustment. But when big offensive linemen make that adjustment, if they make it faster, they are usually very, very good. I mean you can see their growth, and you can see how them excel at playing the position, coming off of blocks, getting in good pass drops, using those long arms. Because the thing with going back to Kobe and Parker is they're 6'8", and they're still 16, 17 years old. Mm-hmm. So they haven't mastered the size, the ability to leverage
carry
and those other aspects.
Even not the leverage part of it, just understanding their own body.
Sure. You're
still kind of gangly and awkward at 16 to 17. Now you just had a growth spurt from 6'3" to 6'8", or 5'11" to 6'2.5", almost 6'3". You don't understand that body yet.
Right.
So to get that type of size in early, it's going to be tremendous. And again, the advantage, he knows the quarterback, he understands the quarterback. Again, having someone that you can rely on, depend upon to come into the system with you, again, eases a little bit of the transition.
Now, you talked about a couple of players who maybe know their systems through their quarterbacks, know a teammate coming in the advantage. We've got another kid, a legacy kid, coming in to play wide receiver whose father played ball here.
Calvin Rapp. Rapp is, the best thing I liked about him when watching his film, his catch radius. Don't want to say anything disrespectful about his quarterback thing, but there were balls that the average high school receiver would not have come down. But he was always able to contort his body in positions, extend his long arms. So his catch radius was just huge. Again, long, still probably doesn't understand his body yet. You can still tell he is still growing. So it's important that he has that development. Again, mostly in high school, you used to see the free release who's able, just to run off coverage, run good routes. Okay, so he's got to get some coaching. We got to get him coached up on getting off of press, working different releases, stacking receivers. Once he develops that, I see him blossoming. And like I said, it's always good when you can have the ability to bring a legacy kid back into the fold, back into the program.
Sure. And I know what you're talking about as a wide receivers coach back in the day. There's nothing better than telling a kid, go get the ball, and he knows exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly what you're talking about. There's no question there. See ball, get ball.
Yep. Hey, we got a couple more we need to talk about. We're going to go ahead and take one more break, and we'll be back to wrap up this conversation about this year's recruiting class right after these.
You can't stop the snow from falling, but you can make sure it doesn't slow you down. The Kubota Grand L Series, featuring an enclosed cab and all the snow removal equipment you need, is the ultimate package for outstanding performance, comfort, and taking on winter. Right now, get financing as low as 0% APR for up to 60 months, plus a 6-year limited powertrain warranty. See your local Kubota dealer today.
Southwest Ag, your Four Corners all-season equipment superstore, online at swaginc.com.
Welcome back to the Skyhawks Coaches Corner, brought to you by Centura Health and Mercy Regional Medical Center. We are filming this week at the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum. I want to thank these folks for welcoming us each week to talk Skyhawk sports with you. And we're talking Skyhawk sports with Darrius G. Smith, head football coach, who has inked a few new players and brought them into the nest this week. We've talked about what you've got going on the offensive side of the ball. You got, just looking at them statistically and some of the things you've said about these kids already, you got a couple of pin their ears back, get after it defensive players coming in too.
Yes. Well, you know, the first young man that we're going to talk about, Aiden Madrid from Bernalillo High School in New Mexico. I mean, he's a steal for us. And he's a steal for us, you know, mainly because he's slightly undersized. But statistically, I mean, he's 2019, you know, defensive player down there, set a record for 172 tackles. I mean, 5 sacks and 4 interceptions. I mean, he's a Tasmanian devil. He's all over the place. And that goes into the aspect of relationships in the recruiting aspect. His head coach, John Cobos, played for me at New Mexico Highlands.
Okay.
So it was one of those deals where when you're recruiting a young man, you want I'm big on relationships and establishing it. So to be able to talk to Cobos and meet the young man and watching this film, I'm just going, he's not going to be available, guys. I was telling him, I was like, UNM or State's got to take a stab at him. I mean, it's just, does he have the Division I body? You step off the airplane looking for a body? Maybe not, but statistically and how he's playing and in that league down there, I don't know. So to get him into the process, and again, you never know what's going to happen in a young man's recruiting process, but this, you know, he stuck it out with us, and advantage Fort Lewis for being in it with the long haul on recruiting, obviously with this, you know, assistance and the relationship that I had with his coach and family. So that was a big get for us. That was a huge get for us to get him out of there.
Playmaker, impact kid. Is he just a disruptor in the middle of the defense?
He is a disruptor. I mean, everything that you just said, playmaker, impactor, he is just, like I said, he's a Tasmanian devil. He makes plays. He finds the football. He gets around the football. He hits hard. You know, I like when I'm looking at guys on defense, I always say, I want a guy that's going to hit things with bad intentions. This kid hits things with bad intentions. And, you know, whether we're going to play him as out of the box, in the box, you know, all that has to be determined on how quickly and he learns our defensive schemes and the things that Coach Riffalato puts together for us. But I'm excited to have him on the field.
It's one of those kids that if the other team has to worry about where you're putting him, that'd be just about right.
That'd be just about right. That'd be just about right.
So what else are you bringing in on the defensive side of the ball?
We're bringing in the only JC signee at this point in time, Thomas Shizor, who's coming from Santa Monica, and he was a young man that we were actually trying to get in at mid-year. Still had some academic work to do. Had to finish up his AA degree, and it was one of those deals when you're recruiting, you have your list, you're going through it, you have to attack where you want to attack.
Right.
And what I do in the area of recruiting, we're targeters. We go after the guys we want. I mean, like, look, if you don't want to take a particular girl to the movies, don't mess around with it. Take the one that you want to take to the movies, okay? He was one. And when he wasn't able to get his degree in time for us for mid-year, knowing the type of player that he was, because he was slightly in the mix with us in the early part. It was a battle. And again, you never know how recruiting is going to unfold for a young man with COVID and situations at other institutions, whether they're getting rid of young men or keeping young men and stacking their rosters. He was one that, quite honestly, we're kind of, okay, we're moving on to the next one. That's the one we want, but that one don't want us.
Right.
So we got to find the next one that we want.
Okay.
And we were probably maybe a day or two of seeking out the next one we wanted. And he called us and got on the phone with our D-line coach, Colton Tigler, then talked to our D coordinator, and he called me, and it was, we didn't miss a beat from the early part of recruiting. We got a little bit more personal, and then it was the aspect, once we got him and his dad on the phone, you saw a beautiful relationship right there. And it was like, I think after probably the second phone call we got off with Thomas, his father calls me back. He has an accent, very strong Nigerian accent. And he's like, Coach, I'm sending him to you. We're not talking to anybody else. I'm sending him to you. And I'm like, well, okay. And he was one that I was still, when you send those documents out, even though everything goes, I say send, everything's digital now. But when young men get those documents, those signing papers, you're still kind of going, is he going to sign them? And because, again, he's a young man. He's a next-level football player. So to have his come on, his was probably second to the last one to come in. And it was kind of like, I don't know, guys. And when it came in, I was, yeah, okay, this is what it's about. And the most important thing, like I said, our class was all targeted. I don't believe in just grouping to recruit and not establishing any type of relationship. It was important to me that each young man that we brought into the program was a fit that we needed,
Right.
and there were people that we wanted. And even more important, that they wanted to be here. I didn't want guys spinning wheels trying to, do the recruiting thing. Everybody talks about you can flip a kid. You know what? When it comes down to it, a young man and his family is going to make a decision to go to school where they really feel it's best for him to go to school. The adage of flipping a kid happens here and there, but you really want a young man to take and embody the vision that you have for a program and say, that's where I want to be.
Sure.
I want to help that team, that coach and staff, that university meet the goals that it's trying to set for himself. And all of these young men are why they signed here at Fort Lewis. And that's probably the most I'm proud of. And, Clyde is kept. We're still in some battles.
Sure.
And that's why it's not just a day, it's a signing period. This doesn't end.
It's about relationships, and you in relationships are off kilter if one person's in it more than the other person.
Oh yeah.
And when they sign with you, when you sign with them, it's you're both saying I do.
Exactly.
And it's for long term. So it is important to build that with the families and the kids as well.
Without a doubt.
Hey, we've got a number of other targets you're chasing. We look forward to hearing about them. You got some preferred walk-ons that came in as well.
Yes.
And we're going to meet those kids and hear more about them moving forward. But we're running out of time right now, and we've got a season coming up, Coach. Take a couple minutes. We're going to play ball.
We're gonna play some
Tell us
ball,
about
baby.
that a little bit.
You know what? It's a beautiful thing. We're playing 3 games right now on the schedule. Maybe getting a 4th, but that's not a guarantee. I'm throwing that out there public just in case somebody see they want to call and need.
I won't tell anybody.
But we're opening up with Dixie State on the 27th of March, and then we're off for a couple of weeks unless we find another one within time frame. Then Western State's coming here on the 17th, and then we're going over to Alamosa to play Adams on the 24th, and that'll be our season. Perfect amount of games for 3, obviously being where we are located, finally getting out on the field, and the kids deserve this. COVID has taken so much away from the student body and student athlete experience of being on a college campus, and as added also probably more personal tragedy and trauma and mental psyche to so many young men and women across the college sector. So being able to play a game, especially a physical game like football, and release the frustration, the tension, and just go out and enjoy yourself, that's what it's time to do. I'm not going to lie. I'm the world's worst office coach. I'm decent with my paperwork. Thank goodness for spell check and grammatic when I write things. But I want to be on the field. I want to be, coaching X's and O's, putting guys up, lining them up, making sure they're doing the right thing, and watching that ball fly around, make some tackles. So I'm excited.
And that said, spring ball's a real thing in college. This is just going to be with scoreboard. I mean, this just makes spring ball as bad as as disappointing as fall was. Isn't this just cool that spring ball actually is going to mean a little more?
Spring ball means something now. Spring ball means something, and that's important. I don't know if there's a way the NC2A can kind of ingratiate it into a process where you get maybe 1 or 2 games true in the spring. I mean, they do it with fall ball for softball and baseball, things of that nature. I don't know. Maybe somebody from the NC2A watch. I mean, give us 2. Give us 2. Let's give us 2 in the spring.
Hey, COVID presented plenty of challenges. It's got to present some opportunities too, right?
Exactly.
Hey, Coach, thanks for joining us. Appreciate hearing about the signees, and good luck coming up this spring. We're looking forward to those games.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to have. I don't know if we're going to have fans, but if we do, please come out and support. And if you don't, hey, we completely understand. Make sure that everyone is still following the mandates that are happening throughout the state and the country. Wear your mask. Take care of yourself. Socially distance. Let's get to the point where we can get to the stadium, Ray Denny, and fill it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrius G. Smith, and thanks to all of you for watching. Thanks to the folks at the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum for allowing us to host the program here. And to Centura Health and Mercy Regional Medical Center for sponsoring each week. For Darrius G. Smith, I'm Bob Bonner. Have a good week, everybody, and keep soaring.